Hi, friends. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be reading chapter 14 of Indian in the Cupboard. And before I do today, we need to go ahead and set our purpose. So, the question that I want you to think about today is what is Little Bear's point of view on being in Omri's world? And what does he say when Omri asks him? So, think about how that question can be answered by listening to chapter 14, which is called The Missing Key. Omri's brothers were already sitting at the tea table when the two boys rushed in. Hi, what's for tea? Omri asked automatically. Gillian and Adil didn't answer. Adil had a funny smirk on his face. Omri hardly noticed. Let's make a sandwich and eat it upstairs, he suggested to Patrick. They slapped some peanut butter on bread, poured mugs of milk, and hurried up the stairs to Omri's room, whispering all the way. How long does it take? Only a few minutes. Can I see her? Wait till we get upstairs. Omri opened the door and stopped dead. The white medicine cupboard was gone. Where is it? Gasped Patrick. Omri didn't say a word. He turned and rushed downstairs again with Patrick behind him. Okay, where have you hidden it? He shouted as soon as he burst into the kitchen. I don't know what you're referring to, said Adil loftily. Yes, you do. You've taken my cupboard. And supposing I did, it was only to teach you a lesson. You're always taking my things and hiding them. Now you'll see how funny it isn't. When did I take anything of yours? Tell me one thing in the last month. My football shorts, said Adil promptly. I never touched your stupid shorts. I already swore I hadn't. I had to miss games today because you didn't have them, and I got detention for it. So you can be grateful I'm only punishing you tit for tat and not bashing you in, said Adil with a maddening calm. Omri felt so furious he even wondered for a moment whether it was worth bashing in Adil for. But Adil was enormous and it was hopeless. So after gazing at him for another moment, with hate-filled eyes, Omri turned and dashed up the stairs, almost falling over Patrick on the way. What'll you do? Look for it, of course. He was turning Adil's room upside down like a madman when Adil, slowly mounting the stairs in the direction of his homework, heard the racket and came running. He stood in the doorway looking at the shambles of pulled-out drawers, degutted cupboards, and furniture pulled awry. You little swine, he howled and dived at Omri. Omri fell to the ground with Adil on top. I'll tear everything you've got to pieces till you give it back to me, Omri shouted in jerks as Adil shook and pummeled him. Then cough up my shorts. I haven't got your stinking shorts, screamed Omri. Are these them? Asked a small voice in the background. Adil and Omri stopped fighting, and Adil, sitting astride, twisted his neck to see Patrick was just lifting a crumpled navy blue object from behind the radiator. Omri felt the anger go out of Adil. Oh, yes, it is, as a matter of fact. How did they get there? But Omri knew perfectly well. Adil had hung them up to dry, and they dropped backward. Adil scrambled up, looking distinctly sheepish. He even helped Omri to his feet. Well, but you've hidden things in the past, he mumbled. How was I supposed to know? Can I have my cupboard now? Yeah, it's up in the attic. I piled a whole lot of stuff on it. Omri and Patrick took to the stairs to the attic, two at a time. They found the cupboard quite quicker under the bits and pieces, but Omri had carried it down to his room before he made the fatal discovery. The key! The little twisted key with its red satin ribbon was missing. Once again, Omri ran into Adil's room to find Adil uncomplainingly putting things straight. What happened to the key? What key? There was a key with the cupboard with a little red ribbon. I didn't notice. They went out and closed the door. Omri was now feeling desperate. We've got to find it. It doesn't work without the key. They searched the attic till supper time. Never had Omri so clearly seen the point of all of his mother's urgings to keep everything in its proper place. The attic was just a sort of glory hole where they could play and leave a total mess. And that was what they always did, only clearing spaces when they needed them for a new layout or a special game. And their way of clearing was just to shove things aside into even more chaotic heaps. Underneath the heaps were all the myriad of little oddments that were small enough to filter through, but and the bigger things, marbles, wheels of matchbox cars, bits of Lego, small tools, parachute men, cards, and so on, plus all the fragments that they could have been almost anything. At first they just raked through everything, but after a while Omri realized that they would have to clear up systematically. Otherwise, it was like the old saying about looking for a needle in a haystack. He found some old boxes and began sorting them into things. Legos here, parts of games there, water pistols, tricks and novelties in another. Bigger things, they were stacked neatly onto what his father rather bitterly called the shelves provided, which normally stood empty since everything was on the floor. In an amazingly short time, the floor was clear except for a few odd things they hadn't found homes for, and a great deal of mud, dust, and sand. "Where did all of this come from?" asked Patrick. "Oh, Gillian brought boxes of it from the garden to make a desert scene," said Omri, "months ago. We might as well sweep it up." He looked around. Despite his anxiety about the key, he felt a certain pride. The room looked entirely different. They were playing in a real space now. He went downstairs and fetched a broom, a dustpan, and a soft brush. "We'll have to do this carefully," he said. "It'd be terrible if we threw it away with the sand." "We could sieve it," suggested Patrick. "That's a good idea. In the garden." They carried the sand out of the in a cupboard box, and Omri borrowed his father's large garden sieve. Omri held it, and Patrick spooned the sand and earth with a trowel. Several small treasures came to light, such as a 10-pence piece, but no key. Omri was in despair. He and Patrick sat down on the lawn under the tree, and Omri took two little men out of his pocket. "Where woman?" Little Bear asked instantly. "Never mind the women, where's the victuals?" asked the ever-hungry Boone grumpily. Omri and Patrick fed them some more chocolate, and with a deep sense of misery, Omri produced the small plastic Indian woman from his pocket. Little Bear stopped chewing his chocolate the moment he saw her and gazed in rapture. It was obvious he was half in love with her already. He reached out a hand and tenderly touched her plastic hair. "Make real now," he breathed. "I can't," said Omri. "Why can't?" asked Little Bear sharply. "The magic's gone." Now Boone stopped eating too, and he and Little Bear exchanged a frightened look. "You mean you can't send us back?" asked Boone in an awe-stricken whisper. "Never? We gotta live in the Giant's world forever?" It was clear that Little Bear had been explaining matters. "Don't you like being with us?" asked Patrick. "Well, I wouldn't want to hurt your feelings none," said Boone. "But just think how you'd feel if I was as big as you are to me." "Little Bear?" asked Omri. Little Bear dragged his eyes away from the plastic figure and fixed them like bright crumbs of black glass on Omri. "Omri good," he pronounced at last. "But Little Bear brave Indian chief. How be brave, how be chief with no other Indian?" Omri opened his mouth. If he had not lost the key, he might have rashly offered to bring to life an entire tribe of Indians, simply to keep Little Bear contented, though his mind flashed the knowledge of what this meant. It wasn't the fun, the novelty, the magic that mattered anymore. What mattered was Little Bear should be happy. For that, he would take on almost anything. They all sat quietly on the lawn. There seemed to be nothing more to say. A movement near the back of the house caught Omri's eye. It was his mother coming out to hang up some wet clothes. He thought she moved as if she were tired and fed up. He stood for a moment on the back balcony looking at the sky. Then he sighed and began pegging the clothes. She sighed and began pegging the clothes on the line. On impulse, Omri got up and went over to her. You haven't found anything of mine, have you? He asked. No, I don't think so. What have you lost? But Omri was too ashamed to admit that he had lost the key she told him to be so careful of. Oh, nothing much, he said. He went back to Patrick, who was showing the men an ant. Boone was trying to pat his head, but it wasn't very responsive. Well, Omri said, we might as well make the best of things. Why not bring the horses out and give the fellows a ride? This cheered everyone up, and Omri ran up and brought the 2 boxes down carefully in an empty box. Next, Patrick stamped out about 2 square feet of lawn, hard to give the horses a really good gallop. Quite a large black beetle alighted on the flattened part, and Little Bear shot it dead with an arrow. This cheered him up a bit more, though not as much. While the horses grazed on fresh grass, he kept giving lovesick sighs, and Omri knew he was thinking of the woman. Maybe you'd rather not stay the night now, Omri said to Patrick. I want to, said Patrick, if you don't mind. Omri felt too upset to care one way or the other. When they were called into supper, he noticed that Adil was trying to be friendly, but Omri wouldn't speak to him. Afterwards, Adil took him aside. What's up with you now? I'm trying to be nice. You got your silly old cupboard back. Well, it's no good without the key. Well, I'm sorry. I must have dropped out on the way up the attic. On the way up to the attic. Omri hadn't thought of that. Will you help me find it? He asked eagerly. Please, it's terribly important. Oh, all right then. The 4 of them hunted for half an hour. They didn't find it. After that, Gillian and Adil had to go out to some function at school, so Patrick and Omri had the television to themselves. They took out the 2 men and explained this new magic. Then they all watched together. First, a film about animals, which absolutely transfixed both little men. Then a Western came on. Omri thought they ought to switch it off, but Boone, in particular, had set up such a hullabaloo that eventually Omri said, Oh, all right, just for 10 minutes then. Little Bear was seated cross-legged on Omri's knee, while Boone, who had somehow gravitated back to Patrick, preferred to stand in his breast pocket, leaning his elbows along the pocket top with his hat on the back of his head, chewing a lump of tobacco he had on him. Patrick, who had heard something of cowboy habits, said, Don't you dare spit. There are no spittoons here, let me listen to 'em talking, will you? Said Boone. I just can't get over how they talk. Before the 10 minutes was up, the Indians in the film started getting the worst of it. It was the usual sequence in which the pioneers' wagons are drawn to a circle and the Indians galloping around them, while the outnumbered men of the wagon train muzzle-loading guns at them through the wagon wheels. Omri could sense Little Bear was getting restive and tense. As brave after brave bit the dust, he suddenly leaped to his feet. No good pictures, he shouted. What you talking about, Injun? Boone yelled tauntingly across the chasm dividing him from Little Bear. That's how it was. My pa and my ma was in a fight just like that. My pa told me he done shot enough 15-20 of them dirty savages. White men move on to land, use water, kill animals. So what? Let the best man win, and we won. Yippee! He added, as another television Indian went down with his horse on top of him. Omri was looking at the screen when it happened. In a lull on the soundtrack, he heard a thin, faint whistling sound and heard Boone grunt. He froze. He looked back at Boone slowly, and his blood froze. The cowboy had an arrow sticking out of his chest. For a couple of seconds, he remained upright in Patrick's breast pocket. Then, quite slowly, he fell forward. Omri had often marveled at the way people in films, particularly girls and women, were given of letting out loud screams or dramatic or awful moments. Now he felt one rise in his own throat, and he would not have let it out if Little Bear had not cried out first. Patrick, who had not noticed anything amiss till now, looked at Little Bear, saw where his bow arm was pointing, and looked down at his own pocket. Over the top of it Boone hung, head down, as limp as a piece of knotted string. "Boone! Boone!" "No," snapped Omri. "Don't touch him." Ignoring Little Bear, who tumbled down his trouser leg to the floor as he moved, Omri very carefully lifted Boone clear between his finger and his thumb and laid him across the palm of his hand. The cowboy lay face up with the arrow sticking out of his chest. "Is he dead?" whispered Patrick in horror. "I don't know." "Shouldn't we take the arrow out?" "We can't. Little Bear must." With infinite care and slowness, Omri laid his hand on the carpet. Boone lay perfectly still. With such a tiny body, it was impossible to be sure whether the arrow was stuck in where his heart was, or a little higher up toward his shoulder. The arrow shaft was so fine you could only make it out by the minute cluster of feathers. "Little Bear, come here." Omri's voice was steely, a voice Mr. Johnson himself might have envied, and it commanded obedience. Little Bear, scrambling to his feet after his fall, walked unsteadily toward Omri's hand. "Get up there and see if you've killed him." Without a word, Little Bear climbed onto the edge of Omri's hand and knelt down beside the prostrate Boone. He laid his ear against his chest just below the arrow. He listened, then straightened up without looking at either of the boys. "Not killed," he said sullenly. Omri felt his breath go out in relief. "Take the arrow out, carefully. If he dies now, it'll doubly be your fault." Little Bear put one side on Boone's chest with his fingers on the other side, and the other took hold of the shaft where it went into Boone's body. "Blood come, need stop hole." Omri's mother kept boxes of tissues in every room, mainly so no one would have an excuse to sit sniffling. Patrick jumped up and brought this, tearing off a tiny corner and rolling it into a wad no bigger than a pinhead. "Now it's got germs from your hand," said Omri. "Where's the disinfectant?" "In the bathroom cupboard. Don't let my mum see you." While Patrick was gone, Omri lay motionless and silent, his eyes fixed on Little Bear, still poised to pull out the arrow. After a very long minute, the Indian muttered something. Omri bent his head low. "What?" "Little Bear, sorry." Omri straightened up, his heart cold and untouched. "You'll be a lot sorrier if you don't save him," was all he said. Patrick raced back with a bottle of Listerine. He poured a drop into the lid, then dipped the little ball of tissue into it. Then he held the cap close to Little Bear. "Go on, pull it out," Omri ordered. Little Bear seemed to brace himself. Then he began to tremble. "Little Bear not do. Little Bear not doctor. Get doctor back. He must make wound good." "We can't," said Omri shortly. "The magic's gone. You must do it. Do it now. Now, Little Bear." Again the Indian stiffened, closing his hand tightly around the arrow. Slowly and steadily he drew it out and threw it aside. Then, as the blood welled out over Boone's check shirt, Little Bear swiftly squeezed the liquid out of the ball of tissue and pressed it against the wound. "Use your knife now. Cut the dirty shirt away." Without hesitating, Little Bear obeyed. Boone lay still. His face under his tan had turned ashy gray. "We need a bandage," said Patrick. "There's nothing we could use, and we can't move him to wrap it around him. We'll have to use a tiny bit of Band-Aid." Again Patrick went to the bathroom. Again Omri, Little Bear, and Boone were left alone. Little Bear knelt down with his hands loose on his thighs and his head down. As his shoulders rose and fell once, was he sobbing? With shame or fear? Or could it be sorrow? Patrick returned with the box of Band-Aids and a pair of nail scissors. He cut out one square big enough to cover the hole in Boone's chest, and Little Bear stuck it on there with great care and even, Omri thought, tenderness. "Now," said Omri, "take your chief's cloak and cover him up warmly." This, too, Little Bear did uncomplainingly. "We'll take him upstairs and put him to bed," said Omri. "Oh, God, I wish we had the key and we could get the doctor back." As they walked slowly upstairs, he told Patrick about the first World War soldier he had brought back to life when Little Bear's had a leg wound. "We've got to find that key," said Patrick. "We've just got to." Little Bear, still at Boone's side on Omri's hand, said nothing. In Omri's room, Patrick made a bed for the cowboy from a folded handkerchief and another woolen square cut from Omri's sweater. Omri slipped a bit of thin, stiff card between Boone and his own hand, and on this he transferred the wounded man without too much disturbance, which might have started the bleeding again. He was still unconscious. Little Bear silently stood up. Suddenly he moved. Reaching up, he snatched off the chief's headdress and threw it violently on the ground. Before Omri could stop him, he began jumping on it. In a second or two, all of the beautiful tall turkey feathers were bent and broken. Leaving it lying there, Little Bear took off across the carpet, running as hard as he could over the deep woolly tufts, stumbling sometimes, but running away always in the direction of the seed box in his home. Patrick moved, but Omri said quietly, let him alone. All right, so what is Little Bear's point of view on being in Omri's world, and what does he say to Omri when Omri asks him? So think about that and how everything is playing out here at the end. We kind of have a cliffhanger at the end of this chapter. I will see you soon. Remember, be kind.